On January the 19th, 1931, in Liverpool, England, a strange set of events were about to begin that would lead to one of the city's most enduring mysteries. The two protagonists are a man by the name of William Herbert Wallace and his wife Julia Wallace. William was an insurance agent who was 54 at the time. He suffered from a kidney disease that caused him a good deal of trouble, and it was expected that his condition would worsen as time went by. His wife, 6 years his senior, was by all accounts in good health, though she had just got over a bronchial infection. From accounts of their marriage in court documents, we get one of two impressions. Most, if not all, neighbours described them as a devoted couple. However, an account from a doctor and nurse suggests that a certain callousness could be detected between the couple when visiting the house for scheduled checkups. On the night in question, a night which started mundanely, William left his house between 7:15 p.m. and 7:20 p.m. for the Central Chess Club, of which he was a member. Though not a regular attendee, he normally went on Monday nights. While on his way there, a call was made to the club. Two operators connected the call after the first call was disconnected.
Oh yes, just a minute.
A waitress by the name of Gladys Harley answered the call and states that after being connected by the operator, she waited 2 minutes for the man on the other end to speak. Before he did so, she heard some mumbling and he made mention of 2 pennies. When he did finally speak at approximately 7:22 p.m, he said he wanted to speak to a Mr. Wallace. Not knowing if he was at the club, she went and found the club captain, Samuel Beattie. He informed her that William had not arrived and said he would take the call. The phone call is said to have went as follows.
Is Mr. Wallace there? No. Can he give me his address? I'm afraid I can't. But he will be there. I can't say, he may or may not. If he is coming, he'll be here shortly. I suggest you ring up later. Oh, no, I can't. I'm too busy. I've got my girl's 21st birthday party on, and I want to see Mr. Wallace on a matter of a business. It's something in the nature of his business.
The caller then asked Beattie to pass on a message to Mr. Wallace for him, requesting that Wallace visit him the following night at 7:30, giving his name and address as M Qualtrough, 25 Menlove Gardens East, Mossley Hill. When Beattie came across Williams at the chess club, he informed him of the call. Williams was bemused. He didn't know anybody by the name of Qualtrough, and though he had heard of Menlove Gardens, he had not heard of Menlove Gardens East. He copied the name and address into his diary and continued on with his game. On further inquiry from another member of the chess club, he was told that they knew of a Menlove Gardens north, south and west, but they had also never heard of an East Gardens. All were positive it must be in the same location. Williams won his game that evening against a man by the name of Mr. McCartney and left the club at 10:15 p.m. Before heading home, he could be found in conversation with a Mr. Caird. Both discussed the moves used to beat his opponent, and then just before parting, Williams talked to Caird about his scheduled appointment the next day. Caird states that William uttered, and I quote, "Qualtrough, what a peculiar name," unquote. Wallace arrived home at 10:55 p.m. and ate a supper his wife had prepared for him. Come midnight, the two of them had retired to bed. At 10:30 a.m, William left his address and went about collecting money, which he later deposited in a cash box located at his home. A cash box which would play an important role in later events. By 2:10 p.m, he had returned home to have a bite to eat, and an hour later, at 3:15 p.m, he left to collect that afternoon's insurance takings. 15 minutes later, he was spotted by police constable James Edward Rothwell, who was cycling down Maiden Lane. In a later statement, Rothwell would say that Wallace didn't notice him, but he could see that William was, and I quote, haggard, drawn and unusually distressed, unquote. He also stated that it looked as if he was using the sleeve of his coat to dab his eyes, as if he had recently suffered a bereavement. This testimony was contradicted by a female client who said that Wallace was in good spirits when he came to her house. She describes him as jocular. She wasn't the only one that said Wallace appeared completely normal. A number of others said he was, as they always found him, amenable and happy to talk. The police constable stuck by his description of William that day, but did concede that the frigid and cold weather may have caused Wallace to dab his watering eyes. At the same time that William was seen by Constable Rothwell, a visit was made to the Wallace address. Amy Wallace, Julia's sister, and married to William's younger brother Edwin, arrived at 29 Wolverton Street. Amy later said that during the visit, Julia had told her that William was heading to the Calderstone district that evening. This would tally with the appointment relayed to William the night before at the chess club. During her visit, a baker boy called Neil Norbury came to the house to deliver bread. He struck up a brief conversation and remarked that she did not look at all healthy. She assured him it was just a bout of bronchitis she was getting over. Amy would leave the house at 4:30 p.m. At around the same time, a window cleaner hopped over the garden's back wall, which was customary. While cleaning the windows, Julia came out to him and paid him a shilling and received change of 3 pennies. By 5:45 p.m, William was finishing his rounds and would arrive home at 6:05 p.m. Both he and Julia ate a small meal of scones. While they ate, the local paperboy pushed the Liverpool Echo newspaper through the letterbox. When later questioned, he said nobody else was on the street, nor did he hear any sounds of commotion coming from inside the Wallace residence. An important witness in the drama to follow was milk boy Alan Close. He would say that he knocked at the Wallace residence at between 6:30 p.m. and 6:45. Not waiting for a reply, he left the milk on the doorstep and went next door to the Johnston household at number 31. Their door was already open, so he walked inside and placed the milk in the lobby. While he did this, the door of 29 opened up, and the milk Alan had left was retrieved. Alan then went back to number 29 at 6:40 p.m. to collect the empty milk bottles. They were given back to him by Julia Wallace. Both had a conversation about health issues they recently had, and Julia told him to get along out of the cold. Mr. Wallace, it's presumed, was upstairs getting ready for the appointment made the previous night at the chess club. He left the house at between 6:45 p.m. and 6:49 p.m, dressed neatly in a light fawn jacket. According to William, his wife walked with him to the backyard gate. As he left, she bolted the gate behind him. He then made his way to the tram. Factoring in the walk and the time the tram arrived, we know that the latest he could have left the house is 6:49 p.m. William would take 3 trams that night. The first one he took was at St. Margaret's Church on Belmont Road. He would then get off at Smithfield Lane, where he would get on a tram to Penny Lane. From Penny Lane, he would go to Menlove Gardens West. The first time William is seen after leaving his house is on the second tram he got from Smithfield Lane. This was at approximately 6:06 p.m. The witness was the tram conductor Thomas Charles Phillips. Wallace had asked him if the tram would pass Menlove Gardens East. Phillips stated that he could wait for another one or get on his and transfer at Penny Lane. William got on the tram and was informed by Phillips that he could get to Menlove Gardens from here. We know he got on the 5A tram, and the next witness to see him was the conductor Arthur Thompson. On arriving at Menlove Gardens West, Mr. Thompson told William the following, and I quote, "This is Menlove Gardens West. Menlove Gardens is a triangular affair, 3 roads. There are 2 roundabouts off on the right. You will probably find it is one of them," unquote. William thanked him and went on his way to find the address passed on to him the night before. He would ask several people for directions to Menlove Gardens East. A few pointed him in the direction of the other streets. Some flat out said it didn't exist. So he tried 25 Menlove Gardens West, North and South, believing that Captain Beattie of the chess club had taken down the wrong street name. All the occupants stated that they knew no Qualtrough. He decided to knock on the door of his boss's house, which was close by, but Mr. Crew had gone to the cinema and there was no reply. On leaving, he came across police officer James Edward Sargent doing his rounds at approximately 7:43 p.m. Wallace asked him if he could direct him to Menlove Gardens East. Once again, he was told there was no such place. He then asked if the police officer knew where he could find a street directory, and was told the most likely place was the local police station or post office. Looking at his watch, he said, and I quote, "It is not 8 o'clock yet," unquote. The officer looking at his confirmed this, stating a time of 7:45. The post office closed at 8 p.m, and he was a 2-minute walk from it. Many have pointed to this as an attempt to create an alibi for his movements that night. But this was an hour after he had left his house, and the more crucial earlier times had already been imparted to others earlier in his journey. On arriving at the post office, no directory could be found. However, there was one in the newspaper shop further up the street. Seeing there was no Menlove Gardens, he gave up and got on a tram home at 8 p.m, according to him. He followed the same tram route and was not seen by anybody on his return trip. When he arrived home, he went to the front door, which was his usual custom. It was 8:40 p.m. when William attempted to open the door using his keys. It was locked from the inside. He knocked but got no reply and walked around to the back door. The gate he had walked out of earlier that night was not bolted. On attempting to open the back door, he could not get in and knocked gently. There was no reply. He would later say that panic set in at this point, and he went around to the front door and back doors again in an attempt to gain entry. After going to the back door for the second time, he came across his neighbours John Sharp Johnston and Florence Sarah Johnston. They were on their way out to pay a visit to a relative. They asked if anything was wrong. William replied that he couldn't access his house and no one was responding to his knocks. When he attempts to open the back door in the presence of the Johnstons, it opens easily. He went inside while the Johnstons remained outside, waiting to see if all was well. They say they could see his movements through the house as rooms and passageways were illuminated by matches. They also heard him call for Julia twice. William went up the stairs first, believing his wife may have gone to bed ill. She hadn't. William then walks downstairs and his neighbours see him light a match at the front of the building outside the front parlour. On illuminating the front room, he exclaims the name Julia. His wife is lying on the floor. Later he claims that he believed she may have had a fit, so he went to the fireplace and retrieved a gas lamp. When the room is fully lit, he sees that his wife has been viciously beaten around the head. Her skull has been smashed, blood has seeped onto the carpet, and brain matter is clearly discernible. William quickly leaves the room and returns to the Johnstons, saying in an anxious tone, "Come and see, she's been killed." The couple followed William into the house, believing she may have fallen down the stairs. However, once they got to the place where her body was lying, there was no mistaking what had happened. Blood spray reached as high as 7 feet. It had landed on the wall, the furniture and pictures, some of which Julia had painted herself. Confronted with the scene, the couple ask if she is cold, to which William replies, and I quote, "They've finished her, they've finished her," unquote. Wallace then asked Johnston to go for a doctor, adding, "I don't think it will do much good." The three moved to the kitchen. After a period of time, William pointed towards a cabinet door. It had previously been damaged, but at this point, it had been pulled away from its frame and was on the floor, broken into 2 pieces. There was also a small number of coins laying scattered around the floor. Mr. Johnston inquired as to whether anything was missing. In response, William reached up and took down a box he kept his insurance collections in. It was situated 2.18 metres above the ground. When he looked inside at the contents, he stated that it had been looted. This is something I do find strange. What burglar goes into a house, reaches up for a box containing money, and then puts it back after taking its contents? In all, £4 was missing, about £290 today, accounting for inflation. When Johnston hears this, he tells William to go upstairs and check to see if anything else is missing. William does so and comes back saying that nothing is. £5 had been left in a dish. Again, this is odd. Why wouldn't a burglar go upstairs? Granted, he may have been disturbed. However, there was no report of anyone saying they were near the house during the time of the murder. At some point later, either Russell Johnston or his father went into the house and saw William cutting up meat for the cat. This action was subsequently seen to be a callous action, most people thinking that this was not something a grieving husband would do. For me personally, I can't see why this would be considered odd. If a pet needs feeding, it needs feeding. It may well have been an attempt to distract himself from the chaos he had just recently walked in on. Strangely, underneath the body of Julia was William's Macintosh coat. Police would later form a theory as to why it was there. We will come back to this later. In the meantime, William seemed bemused and asked Florence Johnston, rhetorically, why she would have his Macintosh. Unable to come up with or provide an answer as to why his wife's body was situated on top of the coat, Florence suggested they go and light a fire in the kitchen. While preparing a fire, Florence stated that William broke into tears twice. This demeanour changed when police arrived at the house. She stated that he got himself together and regained his usual stoic temperament. The first policeman to arrive at the scene was a Constable Williams. He was led around the house by Wallace. The two go upstairs, first into the bathroom, and then into the bedroom where the couple slept. A light was on, and Williams asked Wallace if it was on when he left the house. He is told by Wallace that he likely left the gas light on as he had changed in the room before departing for the non-existent address. Wallace then went to a jam pot which contained money. He takes the money out and tells the police officer that it's all accounted for. At this point, Constable Williams tells him to put it back. It's also worth pointing out that one of the notes had blood on it, though this may easily have happened while it was in circulation. In the front bedroom, a room that Wallace rarely went into, there was pillows and sheets on the ground. However, all the drawers were shut, and there was no indication that a burglar had ransacked the room in an attempt to find valuables. On examining the upstairs, the two men went back down to the kitchen parlour. Soon thereafter, other policemen arrived, followed by doctors and forensic specialists. Evidence at the scene was poorly contained, and certain acts on part of police defy belief. One police detective who arrived at the house drunk flushed the toilet, the same toilet on which a blood clot would later be found. The last act of incompetence came when the police filled the cat's bowl with milk. As we know, one of the key witnesses, namely the young milk boy, said he saw Julia take the milk bottles he had delivered into the house. Police might have been able to corroborate this account should they have inspected the milk and the contents of the bowl. Naturally, one of the main lines of inquiry was the caller, Mr. Qualtrough. Police were later able to pinpoint the phone box from which this call was made. It was located a short distance from the Wallace residence. From early on, police believed Wallace had done it, and the close proximity of the phone box to the house confirmed in their eyes that this was an open and shut case. The lead inspector at the time, a Detective Hugh Moore, would later say that they were sure that Wallace had killed his wife on the night of the killing. They didn't charge him because there was no blood on him, and therefore they could not detain him. This theory of husband killing wife was dealt a blow early on by the milk boy Alan Close. During his first interaction with them, he said that he had seen Mrs. Wallace at 6:45 p.m. Another delivery person came forward, corroborating the account given by Close. He was making a delivery on Wolverton Street when he saw Alan on the Wallace's doorstep. He says the time was shortly after 6:38 p.m. One of the deliveries he had to make was to 27 Wolverton Street, and he states that Alan Close was still at the Wallace's, which happened to be next door. Close also told police that he didn't see any lights on in the front room where Julia would later be found. This was a problem. The question they had to answer was, how did Wallace murder his wife, clean himself up, and leave the house to meet Mr. Qualtrough after a few minutes? We know that he left the house at 6:45 p.m, according to him. The latest he could have left was 6:49 p.m, in order to catch the trams he was seen on. Police could rule him out on this basis, but they didn't. Rather, they simply put it down to a mistake on the part of Alan Close. However, Alan was seen by another boy making deliveries. Regardless, police convinced Alan that the time he had seen Julia was 6:30 p.m. Even with their success in being able to push back the time, it still would have been a monumental feat for Wallace to have reached the tram on time. When police reenacted the journey that night, it became all the more clear that a man in his 50s of ill health could not have possibly made it from his house to the first tram stop, even if the time at which the killing took place was between 6:30 and 6:49. Another difficulty the authorities came up against was the testimony given by Captain Beattie of the chess club. He was adamant that the man he spoke to was not Wallace, a man he had known for 8 years. There was also a number of other anomalies police couldn't explain away. Firstly, when they tested the drains, toilet and sinks, not a trace of blood could be found. Secondly, on performance of a benzidine test used to find blood imperceptible to the human eye on Wallace's clothes, none was found. Thirdly, the first forensic report given by a Dr. Fall states that Julia Wallace sustained 3 to 4 blows to the head at approximately 7:50 p.m, and we know where Wallace was then. Later, while in court, he would change this time to 6 p.m. and state that she sustained 11 to 12 blows. Police would use one item of evidence to try and explain away the anomalies present within their account. One of the theories they put forward mimics a murder played out in the movie American Psycho, where Christian Bale's character, Patrick Bateman, dons a rain anorak while in the process of killing one of his victims. In their account, Wallace put his Macintosh on while naked underneath to stop blood splatter from staining his clothes. Once the deed was done, he went upstairs, got changed, and left the house. Even with this theory, numerous questions still arise around the feasibility of him getting to the tram on time. Also, why would he use his own jacket? As the jacket was charred, it was put forward that he had attempted to light the jacket on fire, but stopped in the belief that the smoke generated would alert passers-by and neighbours to the scene of the crime. Rather than burn it, he threw it to the ground and placed his wife's body on top of it. When in this position, he hit her several more times. The act having been finished, he put on his other jacket, placed the murder instrument up his sleeve, either an iron bar or poker, both of which were missing according to the charwoman, and left the scene to go and meet the character of Qualtrough, a character he, according to police, had created in order to establish an alibi. The police story convinced the jury. After an hour of deliberating, they found William Herbert Wallace guilty, and he was sentenced to death. However, in what was an unusual decision for the time, the verdict was overturned in May of the same year. The reason cited by the Court of Appeal was the verdict could not be, and I quote, supported having regard to the evidence, unquote. Wallace was subsequently freed and would pass away 2 years later in 1933. Many still believe that Wallace was the murderer. Others believe he had an accomplice who committed the deed at the behest of Wallace. And in recent times, other suspects have come under the spotlight. Two pieces of testimony may give credence to the second and third of these possibilities. The second comes from a girl by the name of Lily Hall, who knew Julia from church and also knew William by sight. She told police she had seen William in the company of another man on what would have been his return journey that night. She said he was located opposite to a back lane entrance to Wolverton Street, talking with another man she described as 5'8" and of stocky build. William denied ever having talked to anyone on his return journey, as would be expected. It seems that her statement was rejected on the basis that it was perplexing as a whole. However, the idea that he had an accomplice, possibly hired or informed of the money in his house, is more plausible than the theory pushed by the police. This would explain away all the time discrepancies they found hard to explain. The third possibility is that William Herbert Wallace is innocent and another person is responsible. Wallace himself pointed the blame at one individual in particular, Richard Gordon Parry. During the initial stages of the police inquiry, Wallace suspected that Parry had gone to his house with the intention of stealing the insurance collections. Parry had worked with Wallace at the Prudential. In fact, Wallace was his supervisor. He knew where the money was kept as he had been to the Wallace's house. He also knew that the insurance pay-in for the week occurred on a Wednesday. Therefore, Tuesday would have been the night when funds would have been at the highest. On this particular week, they were down due to Wallace being unable to work because of illness. Added to this, Parry was one of the men that Julia knew and would have let in should he have arrived on an errand or inquiry. Police did interview Gordon Parry. He was able to give an alibi for the night of the murder, but his alibi for the night that the phone call was placed is clearly false. On the night of the murder, he stated that he was with 4 people from 5:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Both a man and a woman say that he was in their company. However, on the night of the phone call, he told police he collected his girlfriend from an address he couldn't recall. He then went from this address to his girlfriend's, Lily Lloyd's, where he spent the rest of the day and night. Lily and her mother would say that he didn't arrive at the house until 7:35 p.m, while Lily was in the middle of giving a piano lesson. People have wondered why he gave this account when it was untrue, and they also question why the police didn't do a follow-up interview to find out why he had given false information with regard to his whereabouts. Another man who knew Parry gave another account of the night of the murder, which has thrown more suspicion on Parry and his alibi. John Parks, also known as Puka, worked at Atkinson's garage during the nights. All those that knew and worked with Parks describe him as honest and industrious. The story he told about Gordon Parry runs alongside other individuals' experiences of him. Parry had been caught by none other than William Herbert Wallace, who reported him when £30 of insurance money went missing. The money was repaid by Parry's father, a Liverpool councillor. On the night of the murder, Parks was working his usual shift, which began at 11 p.m. He was visited shortly after his arrival by a policeman called Ken Wallace. Constable Wallace was the first to tell Parks of the murder on Wolverton Street, and not long after he left, another guest would arrive, Gordon Parry. According to Parks, Parry came into his workplace in the early morning and asked for his car to be cleaned. Parks said the request was odd because his car was clean. Nonetheless, he got the high-powered hose out and gave the car a full washdown, both inside and outside. While he was washing, he noticed a glove, which he took out so as not to get it wet. On picking it up, he noticed it was covered in blood. As quickly as he had it, it was snatched away by Parry, who then said,
"If the police found that," he said, "that would hang me."
Apparently, he also told Parks that he had hid the murder weapon, a metal bar, in a drain outside a doctor's house on Priory Road. Parks said Parry was agitated, and that after being told of the murder earlier, he knew that he was destroying any evidence that may be in or on the car. The reason he gives for continuing is that he was afraid. On telling the family he worked for about the incident, they told him it would be best to stay out of any drama surrounding the case. Rather than stay quiet, Parks said he gave a statement to the lead investigator, Hugh Moore. During the Parks interview, he was asked why he saw no bloodstains on the clothes of Parry. He states that a greengrocer and a policeman had lent Parry a pair of thigh boots and an oilskin coat to go fishing. This, for him, is the reason there was no blood on him. However, as the interviewer points out, Parry would have had to have convinced Julia Wallace to let him into the house while he donned such strange garb. For me, this story makes very little sense. It may well be possible that the individuals that provided Parry with an alibi were lying. However, the idea that someone who's just killed someone, brutally, tells an acquaintance that they would hang should the police get their hands on the bloodied glove, and that he would then go on to tell him where the murder weapon was hid, seems to me hard to believe. If people want to listen to the interview and make their own minds up, we have left the link in the description box below. I think the most likely scenarios are that Wallace was involved in the killing, but he was not the man to have committed the act, or he had nothing to do with the murder at all. There is also the possibility that Julia was never meant to get hurt. Is it possible that Wallace conspired with someone to steal the collection money? It is possible, but in comparison to previous takings, there wasn't much there, and a more significant amount could have been taken at another time. The neighbour of Wallace, Lily Hall, states that she's seen him with a man of, quote, stocky build. Many have said that Hall's story changes, therefore it cannot be trusted. But another man by the name of Henry Harrison Greenlees also saw a man of stocky build. Ironically, this man asked Greenlees if he knew where 54 Richmond Park was. Greenlees replied that this address didn't exist, which it didn't. Other suspects in the case include John Johnston, the man who met Wallace as he walked around to the back of the house for the second time. Some believe that the reason Wallace was not able to get into the building using the back door the first time is because it was locked and John was inside. When he heard Wallace returning to the front of the house, he slipped out the back door, and this is why the door opened so easily on the second time of trying. Is it possible that John and his wife Florence's coincidental meeting was really because John had just left the house after murdering Julia? Another point of interest is the fact that the Johnstons had a key for the house, and therefore could have gained entry without Julia needing to answer any doors. It's also been reported that they moved from their house next door to the Wallaces the day after the killing had taken place. However, they said the move had been planned in advance. Another man by the name of Joseph Caleb Marsden has also been touted as a suspect. He was friends with Gordon Parry, previously worked with Wallace, and fit the description of the stocky man seen talking to someone fitting the description of Wallace on the night of the murder. He had links to a man named Qualtrough who he had worked with on behalf of an insurance collector for the Prudential. It's also been reported that this Qualtrough may have led to him losing his job at the insurance company. The only alibi he was able to provide was that he had a flu on the night of the killing. His name comes up as an accomplice to Parry, wherein which he was the killer, while Parry was the man that made the diversionary call the night before. It has been asserted that they were working together only, or in cahoots with Wallace. The most popular belief is that Wallace was working with an accomplice. The most common accomplices are believed to be Marsden and Parry, but there is a lot that goes against this theory too. Firstly, why use the name Qualtrough? If he had feigned knowing him, it might have his run around the city of Liverpool more understandable. If he had planned a murder with Parry and Marsden, why would he use a name that would lead police to questioning the latter, who actually knew a Qualtrough? He also tells police that these two individuals were amongst the only people to know where the money was kept, meaning if police grew in suspicion of the pair, they were more likely to be arrested, and therefore more likely to spill the beans on the man who had arranged the murder in the first place. Secondly, why would the killer have placed Wallace's Macintosh jacket under or near the body of his dead wife? If the killer or killers are working with Wallace, they would surely know that this might lead police to the man they are working with, and subsequently to them, if Wallace decides to come clean. Lastly, the theory that William hired a killer or killers is also popularised because witnesses apparently saw a, quote, stocky man, unquote, with Wallace. However, why would the killer be waiting around the streets after literally bashing someone's head in? And why would Wallace stand and talk to him in an area where he is known to practically everyone? These don't seem to be the actions of someone who has killed a person in the local area, nor do they seem to be the actions of a man who has arranged the killing of his wife. This case could have ran for a couple of parts. With that in mind, we've left a number of detailed articles highlighting in greater detail some of the theories surrounding this murder. If after reading them you have a theory of your own, please comment down below, and we'll see if a collective effort might lead to a more satisfactory idea of who the killer or killers were.